Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and I missed this one. This one's actually from last year, but I think it's extremely important to go over. Why? Well, because it shows you a pattern of how our media is clearly controlled by the military-industrial complex, namely the CIA. You have to understand the Central Intelligence Agency really bore out many of these black sites, the idea of plausible deniability, subdivisions. That is the deal, okay? So think about that for a second. For instance, Area 51, if you read Annie Jacobson's book, right, you find out that Area 51, this military black site that is going to be essential in testing different types of aircraft, and, you know, who knows how much they're doing that today in that region, but with this multi-layered, multi-leveled facility that didn't have eyes on it for decades, you see that some of the more conventional aircraft we later found out about, right? I believe like the SR-71, right? The bird, the Blackbird, came out of there. Now, I'm sure they did other types of technology after that fact, but this is something a little bit different. This shows you how they got into the media sphere, and we're going to go over Operation Mockingbird, but essentially in that, in that JFK dump, right? And we should have gotten way more files. There were some gems, and this is one of those gems that I missed. So check it out. CIA reveals the name of former spy in JFK files, and he's still alive. So apparently he's living abroad. But what really caught my eye, not only was the time period that he officially worked for the agency, right? 65 to 77, right? The fact that CBS Radio, I believe, was one of his employers. He became an editor at a French paper later on. And that this was clearly part of Operation Mockingbird, which was never officially discontinued. And if you look at how horrible our media is today, you should damn well know that it is severely, compromised. Come on, give me a break. So let's read this one. Updated, in the late 1940s and early 1950s, Paris beckoned African-American intellectuals hoping to escape the racism and conformity of American life. Chief among them, Richard Wright, the acclaimed author of Native Son and Black Boy, who arrived in 1947. So think about that. He arrives in 47. They see they can clearly use him abroad and in the States. He's recruited within 5 years. He was soon joined by Chester Himes, an ex-convict who mastered hard-boiled detective fiction, James Baldwin, the precocious essayist, and Richard Gibson. Actually, Richard Gibson's the guy we're talking about here. An editor at the Agence France-Presse. These men became friends, colleagues, and soon bitter rivals. Their relationship appeared to unravel over France's war to keep its colony in Algeria. Gibson pressured Wright to publicly criticize the French government, angering the acclaimed author. So, see, he's doing this on behalf of the United States government. So, scratch that part in the beginning that he himself was an immigrant coming in. So, anyway, we found out his name is QR Phone 1 and that he was paying as much as $900 a month. Think about that. So, $900 a month back in, the late 60s, early 70s? That's huge. Thanks, Nick. It says, keep it up, thumbs up, and share. Thank you, Burmis Brigade. Boom. So Gibson, born in 1931, actually grew up in Philadelphia and attended Kenyon College in Ohio. All right? Leftist movements, Fair Play for Cuba committee. That's where you know he's working for them because they had their eyes all over Oswald. I've gone over it, Warren C. DeBruy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right? He maintained contact with the government. Obviously, in this period, we know he was working for the Central Intelligence Agency. Think about that. Media personality, somebody on the ground. The money's tax-free, by the way. And at the time, that was the equivalent of more than $6,000 a month. Just saying. That's on top of his job. So this guy lives abroad. There was an interesting take over here. If you want to know, Fair Play for Cuba Committee, a little bit more about him than just what you saw in that article, please check that out. But this is really more important. How the CIA paid and threatened journalists to do its work. So when they couldn't buy off a lot of these journalists, that's what programs like sexual blackmail are for. You know, we often talk about the underage people that are being used, right? Well, think about this. The Sarah Ronsom story in Epstein, she was 22 when she was recruited. Sometimes it's enough to have cheated on your wife. Sometimes being just caught in a compromising situation with someone you shouldn't, right or wrong, perhaps the person's just homosexual and doesn't want to be outed, that's enough. So they'd always try to compromise those people who weren't taking money either. And Mockingbird stretched far and wide, and you know, there's absolutely an offset of this today. Americans love a good conspiracy theory. This is a real short one by the Deadly Beast in 2017, I think. And plenty have bandied about it this election season, yada, yada, yada. But what about conspiracy theories that turned out to be, well, not theatrical at all? The CIA has long played the international game of propaganda acquired by an intelligence agency. But during the Cold War, the agency paid and intimidated journalists into helping promote its messages. Famous Watergate reporter Carol Bernstein broke the story in 1977 for Rolling Stone. Worked on that story for a year. Bernstein revealed the workings of Operation Mockingbird, in which many journalists, included Pulitzer Prize winners, joined the CIA payroll, writing fake stories to disseminate the agency's agitprop and providing intelligence. So it was a dual fold. And that's another thing I want to talk about right now. Because if you look at Robert Maxwell, right? I was reading a story, I think it was by Tom Bauer yesterday, basically disavowing any chance that Prince Philip and MI6 were involved in the murder of Dodi Al-Fayed and Princess Diana, right? And then you go to find out that Tom Bowers wrote in all these different books, including one on Robert Maxwell called The Final Verdict. Now, there's some who have suggested that Robert Maxwell's only relationship to intelligence would be to give them information because he was a large publisher, right? However, you know, running other aspects of blackmail right there, you know what I mean? That's very, very possible as well. Think about that. See, writing fake stories to disseminate the agency's agitprop, providing intelligence. Other journalists were threatened and blackmailed into cooperating with Mockingbird, and many were given falsified or fabricated information about their actions in order to engender their support for the CIA's mission. So they would run propaganda campaigns on them as well. And notice it says the program has never officially discontinued. So I want to point this out. This gentleman, Robert Boyd, remember we talked about those Pulitzer Prize winning journalists? Well, he just passed away this week, okay? And hidden, not in the headlines, but in this man's biography, you'll find out he is one of those Central Intelligence Agency on-the-dole journalists. So remember, at the end of their lives, they're still celebrated. Here, look, Robert Boyd, CIA. You really have to look it up, and there's not much out there. You hit news, and the headlines don't have it. No, it's a paywall to even get that information. Okay, there's Washington Post, et cetera, et cetera. So at the end of their lives, they're celebrated by these agencies. And to me, I find issue with that because they continue to do this. I mean, for instance, the talking points that Trump should now somehow be impeached. Adam Schiff saying the Democrats might be forced, like they need to be forced, like he needs to be forced to try to impeach Trump over him trying to get them to reopen a very real investigation on Hunter Biden that I discussed probably over a year ago with We Are Change, because it was very real. Joe Biden bragged about it. No one's showing that video. In fact, I may have to do that video. I really hate doing the videos on what everybody else is talking about because there's so much else out there. And I thank you guys for your support. So make sure you thumbs this video up. Share it with others. Remember, I'm doing 3 to 7 videos a day over at this channel. If you missed my secret Prozac payout, where there was a company, the Lilly Corporation, that was producing Prozac. In 1989, there's a mass shooting after somebody who was only on it for a month was there, and they basically bought a verdict for $20 million in 1994. Please watch that video. Only less than 2,000 views. Very important video. Big Epstein update today. Talk about pills. He actually had doctors on his payroll drugging up his victims. That is also a must watch. Please, the Colorado video. I mean, this new public code that is now in place in Fort Collins, Colorado, allows 11-year-old girls and up to go topless in public. It's a pedophile's dream. And we do so much more here. So if you're not subscribed, if you're new to the channel, please join the Burmis Brigade now. Remember, thumbs up, sub, and if you can, $5, $10, $15. It means the world to me. No subscribe star, no Patreon, just real news that isn't about left or right. It's about right and wrong. It's the real deal, and I'm always going to call it that way. You may hate me for it sometimes. I may be wrong sometimes, and I apologize for that, but I'm as real as it gets, and I love you guys. I will see you on the flip.